In our meeting, public comments. Is there anyone wishing to address anyone? Public comments? Moving on, I need approval of minutes. First?
Second.
Second. Call for vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Keep going.
Oh, all right.
No. Abstain.
Oh, one abstention?
Abstain, thank you.
Okay, one abstention. Consent calendar.
Second.
First, second. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No abstention.
No. I didn't attend the June meeting this year.
I'm teasing.
Oh.
Regular agenda items, 10-0, legislative update.
Chairman, I'll take that one for Luna. So I just wanted to go over the federal side really quickly. Mark's not going to be here today, so we don't have the state side. But on the federal side, we have submitted an application for what I call an ACME grant, innovation grant, and we've gotten 2 letters of support. One of the letters on the dais is from Congressman DeSaulnier. The other one came from Congresswoman, our leader, Nancy Pelosi. And so that has been submitted for it's a $12 million ask. Other than that, I think that the federal government is starting to move. One of the problems that we've had is that there are no political appointees. I mentioned this last time. And so the undersecretary was appointed and went through confirmation. And so I would imagine now they're going to start filling some of those modal positions. And once they do that, we can get and start asking the political level for a waiver for our Easy Mile shuttle. That's what we had to haul through the Concord parade, is because we don't have a permit, or we could have actually driven it through the parade route, but it would have cost us $21,000 in a fine. And so we don't want to do that. So I think that's of note on the federal side, is they're moving on filling some of these positions finally. And so it's been a long time, but we're excited about that. Anything else? Any questions?
No,
Oh, and then we got $3.5 million. It survived the budget. Yeah, so $3.5 million in the budget for Momentum Station. It has to be matched. So we have to have $3.5 million in kind or match dollars, which we think we have. And so that's set up $1.5 million to augment the SAV program out at Momentum Station. $500,000 to do some improvements to the site if we need. We need to refurbish 3 buildings and add electrification and some Wi-Fi to the buildings, and that's another $500,000, and then another $500,000 for permanent kind of site analysis and getting the permanent site all set up. So we need some dollars to start that. So it's the first investment we've gotten from anybody outside of us and the private sector. So that's great news. That's huge. Yeah, that's good news.
And that, if that all works well, obviously you put that back in for next year.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That's the key.
So we owe the secretary a report. So we've got to request an allocation. We get that allocation once we show that we have a match, and we go through all those negotiations. And then once we get the allocation, at the end of the year, we have to show what we've done with the dollars. And so we're laser focused on making sure that what we say we're going to do, we do.
What was the reaction of the crowd in Concord to their Grand Marshal?
So there was an interview. The person said, first of all, he didn't know what a Grand Marshal was. So that was the highlight, I think, of the reel was, what is a Grand Marshal? And is it a person, or in this case, it was a thing? And so we walked, Jack and I walked around. We walked from where it started down probably 2 blocks, 3 blocks, and the truck was going pretty quickly. So, we're semi-walking, running. And went around Todo Santo Plaza. And then we pulled into a street so that people could see the vehicle. And the first person that came up to us looked at it and said, "Does this really drive itself?" And we said, "Yes." He said, "I want this now." And I said, "Why do you want it now?" He said, "Because I'm losing my vision, and they've taken my driver's license away." And he was fairly young. He was probably in his 60s, but he was losing his eyesight. And he says, the services that you provide, they don't help me. And I need something better than that. And so he said, "Hurry up and get this deployed." There was young people coming up, looking at it, taking their picture next to it. There were elderly people. A lot of the elderly people said, you ought to roll this thing out in a retirement, like community. So Rossmore has actually reached out, the CEO of Rossmore. And I think they own the roads, and so we won't have a DMV permit issue. We can actually run it out at Rossmore.
Well, we
And-
have the,
and so-
Is it a shopping center may be a problem?
That could be true. That's right. Outside the gates, there's a problem, but hopefully by then, we get a waiver, we get a license to operate that vehicle. But overall, very positive reaction to that vehicle.
And I was listening to the interview and the story on National Public Radio that you were quoted on, and it was great to hear your voice. And you were talking about how it's a little too sensitive right now and too slow, these
Well,
cars.
yeah, so initially, when you ride in it, you're saying, wow, this is the first time I've ever, you're one of the few people in America that's ever ridden in a fully autonomous vehicle. And immediately, within a couple minutes, that wears off, and you go, my God, this thing is slow, and it's really, it just travels along and doesn't do anything. It just drives along at a slow speed. So it's not like driving a race car or anything like that. It's really just a stable means of transportation, and once the kind of the wow factor of it's no driver, it's really kind of boring. And that's what I was trying to tell NPR, because it's not an e-ticket ride at Disneyland.
See, driving in my car is actually an e-ticket. There
Exactly.
you go. But no, I mean, you said that it's so sensitive that a plastic bag blowing in front of the car
Oh yeah,
will
yeah.
cause
So
it to stop, and
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah,
Because
so-
that could be bad for people behind this vehicle. Going
well,
so
and
slow.
in the vehicle that are standing. And so when we demoed this vehicle at Media Day, one of the media people asked, will this thing stop if I walk out in front of it? And I said, absolutely. The sensors will pick you up. It picks up a plastic bag blowing across the front end of it. So those kinds of issues have to be either detuned, or the computers have to realize that's a bag and it's not going to cause damage to the vehicle. And so during that process, Habib Shamsku walked out in front of the vehicle, and the vehicle stopped. When we did an interview with AAA for Via Magazine, the reporter and the photographer walked out in front of the vehicle and then started walking toward it like a bull, kind of thing. And the vehicle just stopped. It was stopped because the sensors knew that there was somebody in front of it.
There's no cape.
No cape on it so far, no. It is red, though.
It is red.
is it red, really?
Yeah, it's red. Yeah, both of them are taped red.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that was good news.
Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to formally request a presentation maybe in September about Gomentum Station to the full board, and talk a little about, now that we're getting these kinds of grants and stuff, how we're handling all of that and that sort of thing. I've talked with staff about that at various meetings, but I think we need to update all of the board on what's going on, and maybe, if you've got a short video or something of some of those demonstrations, because the big Gomentum Day down at Bishop Ranch was great, except for those people who weren't there.
Right.
And quite a few of our commissioners haven't seen as much of it as they may have wanted to. So I think it would be good to start getting that out in the general public.
And I agree with that. And maybe you could even bring the vehicle into this room, have it do a little demonstration here in the well in front of us.
That might be
Possible.
difficult, but
They could drive us around the courtyard.
we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
I think
The-
I'm actually being a little bit facetious, obviously, but I think Julie's onto something there.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we could do that.
We need a permit to operate on city streets. Once we get that, then we'll be able to do more. But right now, we do not have the ability to do that.
Okay.
Now, did Chevrolet, somebody else has joined the ranks now.
So all the automobile manufacturers are in some way entering into this autonomous vehicle kind of space, trying to develop their own version of an autonomous vehicle. What you're talking about is Lyft has formed
okay.
a partnership with General Motors, Cruise, to develop the next generation of Lyft vehicle that's fully autonomous. And they want to have a fully autonomous vehicle that gets passengers by the year 2025 or something. Honda just announced that they were going to have an autonomous vehicle, I don't know what level, in mass production by the year 2025. That's when I tweeted out, because they talked about their testing at Gomentum Station. So what we're trying to do at the end of the day is not, we like the technology, but we're trying to entice the vendors to create jobs here. That's the goal.
That's the goal.
The goal is to open up a shop, hire some technicians or some engineers or software engineers here so they don't have to drive down to Silicon Valley, because 680 is getting worse and worse. It'll take you an hour to go 12 miles northbound. from Bishop Ranch to here, you'll miss a meeting if you don't leave like, I don't know, an hour and a half early.
That's right.
That's a lot of time to waste on going 12 miles if you think about it.
Oh, we miss it.
You're missing Newell.
Yeah, Newell's missing.
Newell would tell us about that if he were here.
Yes, he would be glad to. And some of us,
That's
you know.
true. Yeah,
That's why I
exactly.
was all of a sudden.
Yeah, Newell.
Well, the other thing I think that we need to look at is how this, as Randy was just saying, produces jobs, but even the aftermarket for retrofitting existing vehicles with some of this technology. They have automatic braking kits and things like that you can add to, do the braking assist and stuff like that for existing vehicles. Because that's going to be the interesting trick, is how do you integrate these autonomous vehicles into the full fleet? And not everybody's going to be able to change out their car right away. It'll take time, but as we all saw in our 4th of July parades, there's a lot of classic cars out there. They're never going to get retrofitted. They've got to fit into the stream of traffic. And so some of this technology, though, can be met with aftermarket manufacturers and parts makers. And if we can get a few of those companies based in the northern waterfront, even in Clayton, if I had any land, in this region, that's really good for traffic throughout the bay, frankly. If we can take jobs and put them here instead of 50 miles away, that takes a lot of folks off the road.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. Moving on to 11-0, Interstate 680, high arc. Couldn't see.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. The I-680 HOV completion and express lane project will extend the express lanes that are being completed by MTC at Livorno Road up to the Benicia Martinez Bridge. And Leo Scott from Gray Bowen and Scott, we want to provide an update to you about the project's upcoming milestones, activities, upcoming outreach activities as well.
All right, thank you, Tim. Good morning, Commissioners. All right, so we have a brief update for you. It's been quite a while since I've been here, actually, to talk about the 680 project. I think that's good news because there haven't been problems. We are making good progress, so I want to share that with you this morning. So I'm going to cover a brief update, as Tim alluded to, and then talk a bit about some of the impacts in Walnut Creek specifically because that's where the widening is and that's where the impact is significant. Then we'll talk about the outreach and then field any questions. All right, so on the schedule, we did certify the ER, or you actually certified the ER back in December of 2016, and we have just finished the 95% PS&E. So we're finalizing resolution of the comments with Caltrans now. And so as that top blue bar indicates, I think I can point up here anyway, behind you. The top blue bar is our PS&E schedule, which we're shooting to finish here by the end of this year. And then we are going to begin in summer utility relocation. We have a power line along with Wave and Comcast that goes over the freeway at the South Main Street interchange. That has to come out and go under the freeway. So it will be undergrounded through the interchange. We also have to begin tree removal, and we'll get to that. And then there's an item after this where we need your action. That will be Ivan. And then we will begin the advertisement of the project in the beginning of the year and then start construction in the spring. And it will be a 2+ year construction period, which you'll understand here in a minute when I get to the impacts. And then after we take out the trees later this year, we'll put the trees back, or not put them back literally, but replace them when we get out into the latter part of 2019 and 2020. And the idea is to have the lane open sometime towards the end of 2020. So that will be roughly a 3-year gap between what will happen here later this year, because the 680 South section, which you see when you drive the 680 corridor that Randy was talking about just a few minutes ago, with the nice, beautiful under construction orange across the nice future VTMS or toll signs, that should open later in September. All right, so moving forward, what you will see, just as a reminder or kind of a refresher, is that when we open the southbound lane north of Walnut Creek, it will have 2 buffers. And the buffers will stretch here in red from basically the 242 interchange south down to the Treat Boulevard North Main Street area, and then it will open. And so the lane will be open access all the way through Walnut Creek, and then the buffer will start again at Red Gear and run down to Stone Valley Road. The reason for those buffers is to improve the overall operation of both the express lane itself as well as the general purpose lanes beside it. As you will know, for having driven the corridor, the 242 interchange area is highly congested. There's a lot of movement in there, and that same pattern happens south of 24. And so the buffers are intended to sort of smooth that out and make all the lanes work better. And then the other aspect on this slide is the hours of operation will be from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. So there won't be a gap in the middle of the operation. During the middle of the day, the toll will be very minimal, if anything. All right, so on to construction. As you know, today the HOV lane southbound starts from the bridge, basically just past the bridge, the Benicio Martinez Bridge, and runs down to Treat Boulevard and ends there. What our project will do is widen the freeway from that location at Treat Boulevard and continue it all the way down to Red Gear, where it picks up again. And so that widening requires that we do some heavy construction. There's a minor bit of work, as it indicates here by number 1 at North Main Street. We have to reconfigure the off-ramp, the on-ramp there to make some width available for the extra lane. And then similarly so at Ignacio, we have to move the lane, or we have to move the on-ramp a little bit to provide the extra lane that goes through the interchange. So where you squeeze down right now to get under the BART structure and the 24 overcrossing, we have to squeeze a lane in there. So to do that, we shift the Ignacio Valley on-ramp a little bit. And then similarly at South Main Street and then south of South Main Street down to Red Gear, we have to do the bulk of our widening. So that wall, there's a sound wall south of the South Main Street on-ramp that runs all the way down to Red Gear. That whole wall, which sits on a retaining wall, that all has to move. So we have to tear it down and then rebuild it about 10 feet further towards the residence along South Main Street. So that's the bulk of the work that is going to take place and why Walnut Creek is going to see more impact than anybody else. So what I've mentioned is that the impact to the city of Walnut Creek will include the utility relocation later this year, later this summer actually, we'll start. That's a directional drill operation that will put the conduit under the South Main Street interchange. Then, as I just mentioned, we will have the sound wall removal and the reconstruction of that sound wall along South Main Street. That also includes widening of the South Main Street on-ramp structure. It has to be widened to accommodate the new configuration. We do have sidewalk on South Main Street to complete. We've worked with the city staff to solve that problem. And then the ramp widening and temporary detour. When we actually reconstruct the South Main Street loop on-ramp, it has to elevate faster. And so to do that work, we've got a grade differential of 9 to 10 feet, which you can't just fix overnight. So we'll actually have to close that ramp for about a month. And that's probably the most significant impact in terms of the impact to the local businesses and residents along that South Main Street corridor. So we've talked with the City of Walnut Creek staff. We've met with the mayor. We intend to meet with the City Council to share with them what we're doing to minimize that impact to them. The good thing is that detour is fairly straightforward. You just continue your way down South Main Street, Danville Boulevard, and get on at Red Gear. All right, and then the last thing is street rehabilitation because of all the construction. And if you've driven that road lately, you know the condition of the road's not that great. So we will actually put it back into a good state of repair when we finish. All right, so the last impact, and perhaps the most visible one and the most immediate one, is going to be tree removal. And so as a result of the widening that I've just spoken about that's down here south of, we have the wall that I just spoke of here is between South Main Street and Red Gear. But we also have some minor widening that takes place south of the Red Gear on-ramp because we're widening the Red Gear on-ramp. So if you've driven that recently, you'll know there's quite a bit of vegetation just over the side of that ramp. And then just beyond that, there's that big mound that the PG&E tower sits on. There's a wall just on the south side of it that also has a fair amount of vegetation behind it. So by the time you add up all the vegetation and trees from that south end all the way through up to South Main Street, we have roughly 500 trees, a tree being something 4 inches in diameter or greater, that will be removed to facilitate the construction. So the reason that we're asking for the early tree removal contract is to do that tree removal when the nesting season is done, and so the birds will not be a conflict for us. So that occurs between September and February, and so that's why we're initiating that. Obviously, we have some outreach we need to do associated with that, which I'll get to in a second. We do have some work in the South Main Street interchange area. That's that little oops, wrong button. The dot here. There's vegetation that will have to be replaced as a result of our construction there. And then the last little bit that you'll see, although I don't think it'll be very significant, is at the North Main Street on-ramp. We are making some corrections there in terms of the alignment, and that requires the vegetation to come out. We'll have to replace that. Other than that, there's nothing north here that we're going to do in terms of tree removal. All right, so the outreach. As I said, we've met with the City of Walnut Creek staff. We've met with the mayor. The mayor has asked us to go back and make a presentation to the council, which we will be doing later this year. We plan to meet with the Transpac and SWAT boards in July, or if not in July, it will have to be September. And then we will also meet with the Alamo MAC to go through with them the tree removal, the reasons for the widening, the reasons why the widening then necessitates the tree removal. And then as we get ready for the civil work in the early part of 2018, we will have we have a project website up now that will be updated to include the details on the construction, the presentation to the City Council, and then we will have direct mailer to the communities along the South Main Street corridor. That will actually include information early for them about the trees. And then we intend to offer up, and we'll see what the city staff and the City Council of Walnut Creek want, possible neighborhood meetings in those areas where the trees and really the impact would be greatest for construction. The city staff was correct in assessing that there'll be an increase in traffic along that South Main Street corridor, and they want us to make sure that we're addressing that as part of the plan, which we are. And then finally, there are newsletters, as you are well aware, so there will be plenty of information that goes out to the newsletters in the Walnut Creek area specifically. All right, so with that, I'll just open it to questions.
Yeah, I'm going to start out with a question right away. You are going to reach out to Medium Channel 7 channel because you talk about people going, we can't get nowhere now. I mean, you better make sure that these medias run some TV cameras or something, because I got to tell you, you talk about I know it's good to talk to the local agencies, but I'm not a local agency, and I can tell you right now, you're trying to get to work and trying to get to the bridge, or this is going to be a nightmare. You know, no pain, no gain, but there's going to be a whole lot of pain in this. So what is have you guys even thought of that?
We're working with Lindsay. We worked with Lindsay prior to her leave, and then when she comes back. So Ivy and Lindsay have been talking. We have a strategy that includes the MTC, because ultimately they will operate the lane. So that work is ongoing now, and that's why we'll have that pre-construction outreach that I mentioned at the end there. And that can certainly include media outreach, including the television stations and other newspapers as well.
Because like when you made the comment, it's a very insignificant change over at the far. Insignificant in this area is significant.
Well, and you're going to see a tremendous amount of media around September for the opening of the lane south of Walnut Creek. So there will be a great deal of attention on the part of the media here shortly.
And then do we have a prospectus as to how much time is all this going to save? Do we know?
In terms of travel time?
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't come with that slide, but we've shared it with some of the other board members over the last several years. Yeah, the amount of time that you would save from the bridge all the way down to San Ramon, which would be essentially the length of the lane, could be as many as 15 minutes if you're in the lane. as opposed to in the general purpose facility.
The bridge, meaning the Carquinez?
The Benicia Martinez Bridge.
Benicia Bridge, I mean, through the strait.
Yeah.
Okay.
680 through Contra Costa.
Gotcha.
Questions?
Actually, a question, yes, no. I agree with the outreach to the media because there's a whole lot of folks besides Contra Costans and Central County folks who use the 680, and they'll have questions. We all get those questions, so the more that they know ahead of time is a good thing. I think the outreach that was done for the South 680 portion about the tree removal down there through Danville and stuff was very successful. Really well done, so I'm sure that's probably what you're going to emulate
Yes.
For this section as well. I think that's great. The other thing I think is to emphasize to folks, patience and all of that, but frankly, a comment, the work in the South 680 area that we will open in September was not horribly disruptive. It was interesting for a lot of people to watch. And it involved, closing shoulders and things like that during the construction. And so people may have slowed their travel a little bit just to ogle what was happening, but so much of that happened at night when the traffic was not horrible, that I think that was an incredibly successful construction project. I am assuming you're going to stage it pretty much the same way.
Well, this project, obviously, with the widening, I'll back up here.
Some of that has to happen during
The widening,
the day.
yeah, the widening south of South Main Street will be work that we want to do largely during the day so that we
Yeah.
don't have construction noise at night. When we tear down the wall, the
Right.
sound wall, obviously all those residents are directly exposed then to the freeway and to whatever construction noise there is. So, and that's unfortunately about a 10 to 11 month construction operation. So that wall will come down. It'll take about 10 to 11 months to put it back. And so the residents would like us to get in and out of there as quickly as we can.
But
So
that'll be separated from the main roadway
It's
by
separated from the
K-rails
main
and all
roadway,
of that, so they'll
but-
see it, but it won't be in the way.
Right. And so the rest of it, north of Walnut Creek, the work will be very similar to the work south of Walnut Creek that you've just recounted. So it'll be
Right.
at night, and it'll be largely invisible except when there's finally a sign that shows up.
So it won't involve the closing of any of the multi-purpose lanes during the construction.
Correct. It does require, when we're working south of Rudgear, the lane today, the HOV lane, which will become an express lane, starts just as you cross over the Rudgear
Right.
interchange. When we work on the Rudgear on-ramp, it's very tight, just as the on-ramp gets on the freeway, it's very tight there. And we will have to actually, for a period of about a year, roughly, change the start position of this current HOV lane, which will be an express lane. We'll have to shift it about a quarter mile south to facilitate that work in there. So there is a reduction in the capacity in that stretch that we will encounter as part of the construction.
Okay, and that's
So
only one of the worst along the whole stretch.
That will probably, on the main line, that will probably be the most significant impact.
It will.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for that presentation. It's very, very informative, and I'm a relative newcomer on this board, so I'll have maybe some stupid questions to ask. Regarding the trees, people, of course, who live near this area with these trees that help screen, themselves from the freeway, as well as they also help to abate noise. We're taking out, you said 1,500 trees in some locations and 500 trees, large number of trees. What kind of trees are they, and what are the plans to mitigate?
Well,
what are
the trees
mitigating
vary
that?
from native species, oak and other species. I haven't gone through the list exhaustively, but roughly half, a little over half of the trees are native, considered native trees, and then the others are ornamental that were planted when the 680 interchange project widened that whole area south of 24 up through Rudgear. So when we replace them, we will replace them in kind. As much as possible. The current discussion with Caltrans, who will be, in a sense, the overseer and approver of the replacement planting project, they would like to see a 3-to-1 replacement for the original trees or the native species. That 3-to-1 would put us at somewhere around 900 trees. We don't think there's enough room in the corridor limits of the project to plant 900 trees. And there is no formal requirement. There's no statutory requirement nor policy requirement that you have to do a 3-to-1. So,
But it's a very common condition.
it's a very common condition that Caltrans levels.
Not just Caltrans, cities, counties,
Yeah,
everybody.
Yeah, they all do. So it's going to take some work to figure out where we're going to put all the trees that we're going to replace in the corridor.
And what size trees are we talking about planting? Because if you plant tiny little dinky things, they take 20
Right, they
years
take
to
time.
get there, and for all
That-
intents and
that's-
purposes, they're useless.
That's one of the things that we still have to work through with Caltrans.
What are they asking for, and what are we trying to?
They haven't stipulated the tree size in our conversations thus far.
Would it be appropriate for this, for our authority, because we have to
Sure.
answer the people,
Yeah,
to actually be aggressive and proactive here and say, make those trees that you put in the ground, 24-gallon, 48-inch box, I don't know what.
Sure.
But large
What was
trees.
the requirement south in that area?
They
where we did
they
that
actually didn't
replacement?
remove any trees for the south project. So this
What was the
with an
Danville
express lane
tree
project, this
replacement
is
issue?
uncommon.
We have an example before,
Yeah,
so
so
what
yes.
did we do there?
So we built the third of the 3 auxiliary lanes, and we agreed to plant a lush landscaping, which we were down the road of design, and then the governor's drought policy came into effect. And so we just planted 30-gallon, huge trees. And so Newell checked every one of those trees all winter long. He still checks them, I think, and they all survived. And so
Good
now,
for him. Good for
So
him.
now and there's a plant establishment period of 3 years, and then there's an extension that the Danville's going to do for another 5. So it's 8 years of plant establishment. So now with the reduction or the release of the drought policy, we're going in there and doing the landscaping so that people really like what they see. And so I'm pretty sure that when we do a follow-up contract to do the same here, we're not going to skimp on the.
And that may cost more, and I think the point is that we don't care that it might cost a little bit more, because we need to keep faith with these neighbors who live along the freeway as it is. And
That's why we're in charge of the design and ultimate construction, to make sure that happens, so that when we come back in there, they know that they're going to get what we said they're going to get.
yeah, and then if they die, then we'll have an obligation to replant.
Yeah, so there'll be a plant establishment period. There's always a plant establishment period, and they replace the plants. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
So the other
That's why the tree replacement project is a separate contract.
And I know we're dealing with that soon. The other question, I guess, is you indicated that putting in these express lanes, hot lanes, whatever, will decrease, reduce the travel time from the bridge down south by 15 minutes. I wasn't around when these things were approved. I assume that we also gauged or tried to evaluate the impacts of putting in these lanes on the folks who, for one reason or another, can't get into those lanes or won't get into those lanes. Are we doing something here that will actually reduce travel times for the remainder of the folks on the freeway?
The way the lane operates, it draws single occupants who want to pay that would otherwise be in the general purpose lanes into them, which gives you a much more efficient operation of the whole corridor. So there's a benefit to people that are not in the express lane if they're still in the general purpose lane. They're getting a shorter travel time, not to the same degree that somebody in the lane would get. So the idea is that the lanes would incentivize carpools and buses in them, because it gives them a much more reliable travel time, and then those who pay get the same thing. Everybody else benefits by getting more cars out of the general
Has
purpose
that
lane.
benefit in terms of time reduction been analyzed for the folks not opting in?
Yes. Yes.
What is it?
We have. I don't remember off the top of my head because I'm working on a couple of these, but it's in the 5 to about probably about 5 minute range.
Okay.
And that's assuming there's capacity in the HOV lane for a single occupant to go over. So if there isn't, then there's no.
My experience so far has been that I've driven that same stretch on Highway 580, heading through Dublin and into Livermore, and it helps.
Yeah, the 580 eastbound added a lane, which certainly helped because you added capacity. In the westbound, they didn't add a lane, but they still see benefit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
If you need a place to plant the rest of those trees, you can bring them over to Richmond. But that wasn't my question.
I'll second that
So
motion.
this is
Second that
an
motion completely.
this is an action item, right? There's a resolution that goes with this.
It's on the next
What?
agenda.
next item.
The next-
The next piece of this item. What is it?
Okay, so this is,
This is 11.1.
This was a hearing of the report.
okay.
And I have no more questions.
Well, maybe I'm on the wrong item, but I had a question about the authorization from the chair to the executive director to approve the design, blah, blah, blah. Is that the next item?
Yes. Let me get through with this one. and
All
we'll
right,
move
I'll hold my question.
on. Okay. Oh, any-
So I have a comment. So there, when we build that retaining wall, there's going to be piles driven, correct?
Piles drilled,
Oh, okay.
not
All right,
driven.
drilled, okay.
And it'll be the same height?
The wall will be the same height,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions? We all good? No action, so we heard the, okay.
I
he's
just
right.
wanted to make a comment that yesterday we actually met with CTC Commissioner Alvarado to advance the STIP funding for the project, which will allow us to accelerate this project and start advertising it early next year. So, we're expecting that action by the CTC later this year. And I'll turn it over to Ivan.
Well, hold on. Public comments. Is there anyone wishing to address us on the report? All right, we'll move on to 11.2. Everybody wants to get there real fast.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Ivan Ramirez, the construction manager. And like Lito made very clear in his presentation, we need to get a contract out in construction as soon as possible to remove these 500 trees. The reason is because we want to get ahead of the actual main construction contract so that no birds, or I would say no bird, but we minimize any chance of birds nesting in the construction area that will impact the construction operations once the contractor is out there. So what we're asking you to do today is to approve, once the PSNE is complete, normally the board has to approve the PSNE package so that we maintain design immunity, because this project needs to move forward very quickly so that we can get to construction hopefully in the early fall so that we get done by February 15th. There's 500 trees we need to remove. Excuse me. So we're asking you to delegate that authority to the executive director. Back in July of 2015, the board approved Resolution 1545P, which gave authority to the executive director to do such a thing, but in an effort to be more transparent, we're bringing it over to you so that you directly give that authority to the executive director. So with that, I am open to any questions regarding this item.
What does protecting design immunity mean?
So what that means is that if the way that it is written and has been explained to me by our attorney at BBK is that there are certain, not specs, but certain criteria that the standard design have, that if we adopt those standards, so in this case, most likely those standards are Caltrans standards, then we are protected from any issue that comes out of those standards being faulty. That's what it means. I don't know if that was clear enough.
I still don't understand it.
So I'm going to give you another chance at it. So our design has to abide by certain accepted standards. Mm-hmm. So in our case, those standards are Caltrans standards. If
right.
we are found to follow those standards, then we cannot be liable for any issue that comes out of our design for following those same standards. That's the best way I can explain it.
What does that have to do with approval? So who's actually doing the design? Is that your consultant?
Yes.
So, I just don't.
So it's
things the way it's written. The second paragraph under summary of issues makes no sense. Pursuant to Government Code Section 830.6, the authority must approve the design for this work to protect design immunity, or approval of the design can be delegated to an employee of the authority exercising discretionary authority. That sentence makes no sense whatsoever.
This comes directly out of the Public Contract Code. a lot of what we're describing here. So the board, in order to preserve that design immunity, and it has nothing to do with the designer, they are subject to their own liability laws. So we approve the design, so the board has to approve it as the law is written, or the board can delegate that authority to somebody that has discretion. That's the word that our attorney uses. So the executive director is the person that the board has elected to be able to use that discretion, and that's what part of Resolution 1545P. So this is just I don't know if I want to call it a technical matter, but before we put our construction contracts out to bid, this is a procedure that has to take place so that we preserve that design immunity as an agency.
So it says here the option is for the authority to approve the design and the advertisement at the next regularly scheduled meeting. So if that happens, it means the whole board would be approving the design. And what we have the authority to do is to delegate that authority to the executive director. But I've never seen the board approve a design anyway, right? We don't approve designs, do we?
Yeah, every project that so there's two options. We can do the construction management, what we call AAA, advertise, award, and administer the construction contracts, or we can have Caltrans do it. If Caltrans does it, we don't bring this to you because we just supply the consultant help that they request.
Okay.
We have chosen to take the responsibility, and when we take that responsibility, there are certain aspects of the law that we have to cover. You as a board can authorize us to move forward with a design, or you can delegate it to me. Either way. So what we've agreed to do is when you delegate that to me, we come back to you and report exactly what we're approving, what I'm approving. Or, and this helps saves a little bit of time, in this case, we can bring it to the full board and you can approve it as a entity. That's easier for me. You guys take the action. But we're preserving the right in case if we need to move quickly to allow for the delegation to the executive director. The way I'd rather have it is you guys approve it, and that's great for me.
Well, I hate to continue beating on this, but let's say that the design approval goes to the full board. What do we get? I mean, do we get a big set of plans and say approve this, or I've never seen that.
No. So what you get is you get the staff's work to say these plans have been developed pursuant to the contract specs that we follow, in this case, Caltrans. And we're saying it's good. And then you authorize us to proceed. So it's a kind of a good, we can bring the plans, we can lay them out, we can show you the specs. We just have never done that.
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe again, we've never actually approved a design. We have. I've never done it. I mean, I've never seen it.
Look at the.
That's the point. That's the point. It's all done by staff regardless.
That's probably why you want to delegate it to me. But
so
there's a couple choices.
Yeah.
That's
fine. I just don't understand any of this, but I trust you.
Well, we can have Mala come in and at a future meeting and kind of lay out or it wouldn't be Mala, it would be Kevin Chan.
It could be Kevin Wang, who is the person I rely on for this information.
I mean, my point is that
I get your point.
We never get involved in approving a design. It's all delegated to staff in any case. So I just don't understand the difference between the whole board approving staff doing something, or this committee approving the executive director to do it. What's the difference?
But you're recommending to the full board that we get the opportunity to approve that. That's what you're approving. You're moving it to the full board.
And just so, if I could ask a question of the staff or Randy, my understanding of this is that regardless of which way we do it, the intention is to preserve design immunity under either option.
Right.
That's what this is all about. Okay, all right. Thank you.
So I would presume we need a motion.
I would move approval.
Second.
Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? There we go. 12-0, Interstate 80, I-680, State Route 4, interchange improvements.
Again, this is Ivan Ramirez, construction manager, and this is also an action item, and this is in relation to request for proposals 15-3, which the board authorized for release on April 21st of 2017. 5 firms came back with proposals. We shortlisted 4 firms, and those firms were AECOM, HDR, Somas, and the HANA Group. K&B Construction, we didn't shortlist because the panel didn't feel they were qualified to proceed to the next step of interview. So, and I just want to mention the panelists, which was composed of Stephanie Hugh, who is a staff engineer, and she did great. We also had Kevin Emai from Contra Costa County, and we also had Andrew Basketball from Caltrans. So after the presentation in question and answer session, the panel felt that the HANA Group was the team that had the best fit for the project and to work for our agency. And in addition to that, I just want to mention that all 4 shortlisted firms had some elements of local firms. It's all a locally funded project, so they had the opportunity to qualify for points. And Somas collected 5 points. The other 3 remaining shortlisted firms collected full 7 points. And I just want to tell you that it's becoming increasingly difficult to select these firms. They all come in and well prepared, and they do an excellent job putting it all out there for us. And Stephanie and the team struggled to select the firm, but again, it eventually tilted in the direction of the HANA Group. So what we're asking you today is to allow us to issue a notice to proceed for an amount of $100,000 because we need to immediately begin doing the constructability review for this project. As you might remember, this project also has a feature of base bid and additive bid, at least until now. It might change in the near future here, where we might be able to go full steam ahead with the entire project. And we're also going to ask you to ask us to begin negotiations, to allow us to begin negotiations with the HANA Group so that we might be able to bring to you a contract for your approval in September. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any more discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Correspondence?
Just 1 second. I want to say hooray, hooray, hooray. We're finally getting there. And if everything goes right with SB1, we'll be going for the full project, not just pieces. So, yay.
All right. Correspondence, news clippings? Commissioner staff reports. I have no comments personally. Commissioners? Oh, we'll get to him. Executive staff comments?
You know what? I should report out. Earlier in June, I attended the CalCog board meeting up in Sacramento. We had a full day of discussion of where is CalCog going and how can we better serve our members, and talked about some pieces of legislation going forward and advocating on behalf of self-help agencies like ourselves. So it was a good meeting.
Executive.
Commissioners, as part of the meeting with CTC Commissioner Bobby Alvarado, the other thing we mentioned was we need to fill a funding gap on 684, so he's going to deal with that. He's the chair of the California Transportation Commission, so that's good news there. I think I misspoke on Interstate 680. I think it's a 5-year plan establishment period, not an 8. It's 1 and 4. But point is, we'll take care of those plans for a while. And then we've recently got information. We advertised I-80 Central, and there's a Home Depot and there's a Costco out there, and so we've got a project that we're in charge of construction. It's a Richmond El Cerrito kind of partnership. And we've got a project that we advertised. The feedback that we got during the advertisement period was there's a lot of contractors that are busy that do that type of work. They're working not only on the public sector work, but also in the private sector work. And so we try to drum up as many bidders as we possibly could for this project. And we got one bidder. And that one bidder is Gelati Brothers, based out of San Rafael. Mike Gelati, I believe, is the owner, and he's a board member with me on the International Partnering Institute. He's a partnering contractor. His bid, so the engineer's estimate was about $2.66 million, and it was about $333,000 over. And so we only have one bidder, but in our discussions with the various potential bidders, the numbers seem to be in the ballpark. And so we'll bring that to you as a full board, but if we delay and we try to get another bidder, the worst thing is we lose this bidder, and if other part it could be we gain another bidder, but the prices increase, because this is the conversation we had 7 years ago. Are we better off in the Great Recession than prior? Well, escalation is taking off. That's why we're trying to accelerate 684 Phase 3 and the I-680 HOV lane southbound, because the bids are going up. And we're doing everything we can to be a great partner to get the best bids we possibly can. So as staff, I think our recommendation will be in the future at the next board meeting to authorize award of this contract. I mean, you guys can we report to you, but that would be my recommendation. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. It's not an action item, just information only. Thank you.
Don?
Well, there's two ways of looking at these things. The bid was high or the cost estimate was low.
Yes, we're in this. So in 2008, the engineer's estimate generally was the low because of escalation. Cement was going this way, steel was going this way, and labor's going this way. And so labor's rising. We're in a really hot market. We're in competition for electricians with Google and Apple and all these other places. And so, we're trying to get as many bidders as we can.
Yeah, I was speaking of what you stated. I was on vacation, and right beside me is we're down at a recreational thing, and there is one of the key companies, private, and now Google in San Jose or wherever is going to build 40 zillion feet.
Zillion? Really?
Yeah, it's a lot. And I guess he said his company is expecting like the next 5 years that they'll be working. I mean, which takes
That's the only place they'll be.
Yeah, the Apple campus is taking a lot of the cement
Yeah.
and away from these concrete plants around here, and the cement's all going to the South Bay to build new structures for the Apple campus.
And that's not counting the Google.
Randy, question. When did we actually put together the engineer's estimate, time-wise?
You check it, don't you, right before?
Yeah, so within 2 months of advertisement.
Okay, so you've revised the original engineer's estimate upward.
We revised it even during the advertisement period. We raised it by $200,000 because staff caught a little error in there. We brought it to the designer's attention. They agreed with us. They brought it up. So, of course, even after we raised it, it's the engineer's estimate.
But that's what's happening with inflation, and the prices are changing that quickly. Yeah, it's good to know. Well, let's get on it. Let's get it done.
All right. Let's see. That's it. Next business meeting will be September 7th, 8:30. And that's a Thursday. Adjourn. I'll be here.
Have a safe trip back to your vacation.
Thank you.
Where did you come from?
Thank you.
Twain Hart.
Take the rest of the month off.
Oh, thank you, Tom.